Hey everybody, welcome back to my collection overview. So as you can see, this is mostly blush and kind of bronzer highlights. I clearly have a lot of blush, but I don't have very many bronzers, contours, or highlights. So I figured I'd just throw it all into this same video. Okay, so the plan is to swatch everything because there isn't that much considering swatch everything. I might find a dupe amongst this. Like I said, it's more blush than anyone really needs, but it's not that much considering, especially on YouTube, what people can accumulate. So let's just dive in. I've talked about these a lot. These are the Milani Powder Rose blushes. I have a whole video on these specifically. I love them, not just because they are beautiful to look at in the pan, but they're amazing on the skin. This is a really great neutral color. This is called Romantic Rose. I don't know how well it's going to show up on a swatch. It is a matte shade. Most of these are matte. The one shimmer, well, let's just swatch the shimmery one. This is called Blossomtime Rose. I'm actually curious to swatch this compared to a couple of other blushes I have because it's a very similar vibe, that peachy pink with a gold sheen to it. I'm playing with a new little lighting setup, so please do keep me posted. Obviously, I'll see what this ends up looking like in editing. Might do this video again, we'll see. This shade is Tea Rose, and it's just a nice, cool pink. Hey, buddy. Tea Rose is a vegan shade. Now, for some reason, this doesn't swatch out very well with my finger, but it is really pretty on my cheeks. So that is something to keep in mind. Swatches don't always tell the full story. But there's that shade. And then last but not least, this has been a favorite for a long time. This is Coral Cove. Really great this time of year and in the summer. I'm really loving this as a winter blush, though, I have to say. It is actually snowing as I film this. It's that really pretty nutcracker sort of snow. Digging it. So those are those blushes. Highly recommend those. While we're talking about Milani, I have two of their baked blushes. This one is the shade Luminoso. I've had it for a while. The writing's kind of worn off the top of the package, but I love this shade. It works really well for my skin tone. I know some people find it much too orange, but it works for me. There's a slight sheen to it. It doesn't have any sparkle in it, but you can see it does have a nice golden sheen. Love that blush so much. And then the second one is called Dolce Pink, or Dolce Pink. And it's much shinier, much shimmerier. It's got this kind of marbled thing going on. More of a pink with the gold shimmer in it. So I'll put that next to Blossomtime Rose so you can see the difference. These aren't necessarily swatching amazing because this is not how you're supposed to use them. But you can see they're both kind of equally shiny. They are a very similar color, but Blossomtime Rose is certainly more peach. It appears that that's showing up on camera, but even though I'm wearing glasses right now, it's hard to tell. So those are all of my Milani blushes. Let me do these actually first. So these are all from Wet n Wild. They're the ColorIcon blushes. This is in the old packaging with the old kind of setup. So let's start here. So this is the shade Heather Silk. And it's a really pretty, I've heard people call this plum, although to me plum is darker and more purpley. But it is a richer tone of pink, really pigmented. you have to be a little, or I have to be a little careful with those because you can see how much more pigmented they are than the Milani blushes, which is not, doesn't automatically mean they're better. I actually think that it's a little trickier to work with, but they're still beautiful. They blend out really well. This, again, is a great winter shade. I'd actually like to, I haven't been using that one as much as I could, hence why I'm doing this kind of video. This is a pretty classic shade. It's Pearlescent Pink. This is the new formula. I had it in the old one too, but then I dropped it and it shattered, which, not great. But this has that same tone as Blossomtime Peach, or Blossomtime Rose. I'm very curious to see how this compares swatch-wise, although we can't put it right next to it. So they actually look very similar. Hold on. Let me put these together. So this is the Wet n Wild shade. This is Blossomtime Rose from Milani. So they are very similar. So if I would say when it's swatched heavy, I think there's just a little bit more orange in the Blossomtime Rose. But honestly, if you wanted to save some money and you didn't really care about, the difference in how these look in the pan, then you can probably just go with Wet n Wild. I will say that the Wet n Wild, because I really had to build up Blossomtime Rose to make it appear as pigmented, just for the sake of color comparison. So if you find blush is a little tricky, you like this color, but maybe something very pigmented is going to get you in trouble, then Blossomtime Rose is a good one to have. Yeah, there's just a little bit more kind of pinkiness to the Wet n Wild, I see. But just, heads up. I probably could declutter one of those, but I'm not gonna. This is the last Wet n Wild shade I have. It's in the shade Mellow Wine. This is a really pretty, it's a very neutral, almost, as it's just, sorry, getting used to the light I have going on here. So it's a very neutral, almost kind of brown shade, which might not sound that exciting, but as an actual blush, it's really pretty. Great for those days when maybe you don't want a very colorful blush. Maybe you have a lot going on elsewhere, but you want something on your cheeks that's maybe a little bit more than that first Milani shade, the Romantic Rose. It's a really great one. And just since we're on the blush part, this is a ColorIcon Trio from Wet n Wild. It was limited edition. I mean, if I had to only keep one thing, this might be it, just because this is so good. Wet n Wild, bring these back out. This is so good. Oh my gosh, the formula, everything. I'll swatch the blush while we're talking about blush. It's so smooth, it almost feels like cream. I hate when people say, oh, it's so buttery, but I mean, these are freaking buttery. What are you gonna do? And a really pretty, cool pink, little, cool pink, little sheen to it, right down there. Ugh, love it so much. The highlight in here is why I don't really have that many highlights, because that's all I freaking need. So good. All right, I'm gonna swatch out these two e.l.f. blush palettes on this other hand. I love these. They're fantastic. Comes with 4 pans, a really nice mirror, and the formula of these is absolutely beautiful. These 3 are matte. In both of these palettes, there are 3 mattes and 1 with glitter. Now, I don't find the glitter to actually show up very much, but be aware that glitter is in one of them. Now, these pans do pop out. I have the contour palette over here. We'll talk about in a second. They have an illuminating palette, so you can mix and match if you want. So there you can see those shades. That's the one that has the glitter in it, and I I don't know if you can see any at all. I really, you know, you might see a speck or two, which might actually be worse than if there was a lot of glitter in it. I don't know, depending on your preferences. This next one is the dark palette. So they have a light and a dark in their blushes, which I think is nice, although it would be even nicer if they came out with, you know, contour palettes and all that stuff that could work for everybody. I would be interested. I don't know how these work on deeper skin tones. I would love to hear if you have deeper skin and have tried this, or you know someone who has. I'd love to know what these are actually like. I find these to be incredibly pigmented, which again with blush is not necessarily exactly what you want, but I love this. If you've seen my January favorites, you know this is what I've been rocking most of the month. I just think these are really cool winter shades, even for pale skin. But you can see they're just crazy pigmented. This is the shade that has the glitter in it. The glitter looks a little bit more intense in the pan on that one, but again, it doesn't necessarily show up. Sorry, I'm not working this very well, am I? Woo! So you can see comparatively, they are much more pigmented, the dark shades. My assumption, although you know what they say about assumptions, is that to help it show up on deeper skin tones, they made it more pigmented. I don't know, but I love these. This is one of my favorites for wintertime. I love rocking that in kind of an 80s placement, a little bit more almost contoury, but a little higher on the face and back towards the temple. I've been digging that lately, and maybe you can see the glitter in that shade does. Let me get a little closer. Maybe you can see it show up a little bit more. They probably could have skipped the glitter on that, but so here's my current blush collection. Aww. So very quickly, talking bronzer, highlighter. Let's talk bronzer first. So the bronzer that is in this Wet n Wild trio is really great. Again, so creamy and beautiful. It does look a little almost yellow on my finger, but on my skin tone, the swatches out really nicely. It doesn't go too orange. Maybe because it has a little bit of that kind of yellowness to it, it's a little bit more natural looking for my skin tone, which is neutral leaning warm. This is the e.l.f. Contour Palette. It's a really great little palette. The shades work really well for me, being somebody who is quite fair. So you can see the bottom two, there is a bronzer and kind of a cooler contour. This is really all I've been using for contour lately. It's not as cool as NYX's Taupe, which I have decluttered since I had the old packaging, and it was getting pretty grimy looking, I have to say. And these are not really swatching out quite that strong, which is one of the reasons I love this product for what it does. But you can see that center shade, that's the cooler shade. It is much cooler than the other two bronzers. The Wet n Wild bronzer is a little bit more kind of almost bright. Again, that yellowish tone. Peach maybe would be a better word for it. Also in this palette is this setting powder, which I'm starting to use a little bit more. I never think of it, so I haven't used it as much, but it is really nice. I mean, that's not going to swatch out to anything, but it is really great for under the eyes. And then there is a highlight in here. The highlights, the e.l.f. highlights, I find both in this palette and in the illuminating palette are very subtle. They last much better than, say, the Wet n Wild cushion highlight, which I'm not really including in this video because I'm getting rid of it. I've talked about that elsewhere. You can definitely check out some more videos. I'll have them linked below, but you can, if I didn't just hold my hand where it was getting blown out. So you can see it's a white kind of golden highlight. once it blends out on the skin, it's a very natural looking highlight. So if you want that, you know, glow to the moon thing, the e.l.f. highlights, at least in these palettes, I'm not talking about the baked highlighters or the individual $3. But yeah, the palette highlighters, these quad highlighters, are a little bit more subtle. Finishing up here, so the highlight, this is in Sunset Junction. I forget if I mentioned that. Obviously, limited edition, you can't buy it anymore, which is a shame because, oh my gosh, wait till you see this highlight. It's so pretty, in my humble opinion. But it's more intense than the e.l.f. and it has more of a peach, pink, champagne-y thing going on. But I really love it. I really hope this is translating. And I only have 2 more highlights. Another one is limited edition, unfortunately. This is the Wet n Wild Highlighting Gold Bar. This was from their holiday collection. This is my gold highlight, you know? So you can see that's much more gold even compared to the e.l.f. and much more shiny. It's much more intense than the other 2. Obviously, I usually don't wear it quite that that strong, although it's a beautiful eyeshadow, I will say. Speaking of eyeshadows, this is another one of my favorite highlighters, even though it is technically an eyeshadow. This is the e.l.f. Baked Eyeshadow in the shade Enchanted. It doesn't feel as nice as those. Those feel much creamier, for lack of a better word. This feels quite dry, but I like that because I don't personally like a super crazy highlight that's kind of the stripe of glitter. And this just has a really nice, a really beautiful sheen. It's kind of the love child. It's actually exactly the love child of those 2 Wet n Wild highlighters. And when it's blended out on the cheeks, it's awesome. That's why I don't really have that many highlights. I kind of have all I need. Although that doesn't mean I don't want some of the new NYX ones, or I'd love to try the e.l.f. baked highlighters, just the actual legit highlighters, even though that's totally a legit highlighter. I don't know why I said that. But anyway, there you have it. Those are my blushes, contour, highlight, bronzer things. As I've said, I've done a video on these specifically, but if you would like any more information, a more in-depth review on any of these, please do let me know and I will, I'll make that happen. And in the meantime, I hope you are enjoying these collection videos. I'm enjoying making them, I have to say. And I hope you are also having a fantastic day or evening or morning or whatever it is you are doing. I will see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.